Welcome everyone, I'm Chris Dobbin. I'm thrilled to welcome you to another episode of Amplify Your Brand, the ultimate live on building your brand in today's digital age. Along with my fellow colleague on the screen there and talking with me, Simao, a branding expert who we're here to share expertise and help you take your brand to the next level. So whether you're an entrepreneur, small business owner, someone tinkering with a personal brand, a marketing professional, this live stream has practical insights and strategies that will help you amplify your brand and stand out in the digital landscape. So please get ready, take some notes, take what we're talking to action, and please, by the end of this webinar, you will have a roadmap to build the brand that truly resonates with your target audience. So thank you for joining us today, and let's find another way to amplify your brand. And today we're talking about, the Branding Triad. We're going to unlock the brand's three core pillars, which essentially what we're saying is that without these three in place, your brand really can't do what it's trying to achieve. It's as simple as that. Like, these are three essential pillars of any brand. It doesn't matter whether you're big, famous, and well-known, or you're just starting out. If you don't have these three things in place, you're not really going to have a lot of success because you're essentially either going to build the brand just for yourself and have no audience. You're going to have an audience that isn't the one you want. You're going to have some great people following you, but they have no idea who you are because you don't have any visual presence or a presence that resonates with them. So by the end of this whole session, we're going to cover all those topics, and you're going to really understand the value of branding, essentially, when we get to the end of this process. But give me your insights on these three. What are your thoughts?
Well, you said it, and I will complement with this. Most brands fall short of having the first of those pillars in place. Without giving too much away, we're just about to dive into it. Strategy is not usually considered with small businesses, especially in startup phases. And that's one of the earliest, quickest, and easiest mistakes to make that lead into the second, which we're also going to cover in depth.
Which is your little baby, which is visual identity.
Correct.
You love that part of it. Yep.
Correct.
And then we come full circle back to my strength in how do we get out there and push it. So let's get into it, I guess, and talk through what these things are. But before we do, let's highlight the fact that this is all based on the P8 branding program that we spent 20 years developing and upgrading your branding on identity framework. So it encompasses 8 critical sections of the brand, which we call the 8 Ps, which is an easy to implement and understand program. So if you're a business owner, we use this program to amplify your brand. And we talk about, generally each week we might highlight this as a special episode. We're actually going to talk about all 4, but we're going to focus on 3 of them because people and product aren't as relevant to these pillars. They are part of it, but they're definitely not the key element of today's conversation. So today we're going to actually move beyond the logo. We're going to uncover the visual elements of your brand's unique story and master the creation of cohesive brand identity systems that resonate. So we're going to explore the strategic clarity that insights defining your brand, understanding your audience, and aligning that with their aspirations. So we're going to navigate the dynamic world of branding and marketing and learn a strategically way to deliver your brand message across various touch points, which engages your audience through social media, advertising, and other channels. So what are they, Sim? Let's get into it, and I'll bring us up to the screen. Whoops, and put us here.
So the first one is the strategic approach to creating a brand, learning how to influence an audience by aligning the strategy with the audience's aspirations.
Yep, which leads into, as I said earlier, what you were touching on, which is brand identity. It's one of your favorite things to get into and discover the elements that narrate your brand's unique story.
Yes. That leads us into brand marketing, which is more usually known as promotion, advertising, marketing, which is what most business owners call this this pillar, and where they cram in the sales, the promotional part, and just make a big cake out of it, hopefully to get some results. But without the right ingredients of strategy and identity, this cake is probably not going to grow as much as it could have if it had all the ingredients from the start.
And today we're going to actually highlight the fact that brand marketing is essentially the engine, and without the oil that fuels it, which is brand strategy and identity, marketing can fall over quite quickly. But we'll get into that later in the episode.
Yeah.
What we're going to talk about first is brand strategy and the art of clarity. So we're going to dive into why strategic clarity matters. We're then going to explore the identity of your brand and your audience and the compelling reasons to do this, why brand matters. We're talking about identity, not visual identity in this part of the project. The presentation, and we're going to learn how to influence your audience by aligning your brand strategy with their aspirations. And that's the key there. It's about them, not yourself.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. The first one, understanding your audience. A brand strategy involves a deep exploration to define who you are as a brand. It means clarifying your unique attributes, values, and the essence that sets you apart in the market. These are really big things that people don't really understand if they don't go about it the right way. They'll start going, and this is a common thing. A lot of clients will say to us, we're not attracting the kind of business we want. We're not getting the kind of clientele that we'd like to work with. These are sure signs that if you're doing something that you're not happy with who you're working with or who you're attracting, it's usually to do with this, the fact that you don't understand who your audience is. Like attracts like. It's that simple.
That's correct. Yeah.
And
reflection based on values goes a long and deep way in establishing the brand and creating that audience, because you'll have to go and get them and speak to them in a way that it not repels them because they feel the presence of sales, but attracts them because there is something about the way you communicate that reflects their current beliefs, their way of being in life, their position in the marketplace. And once you start delving into that and truly understanding that even though you sell sandwiches, not everybody will buy sandwiches because everybody needs to eat. But if you buy sandwiches that are locally sourced, that use eco-sustainable farming sources, that
you make the bread.
You make the bread yourself. And
on site.
You take it out of the oven at 6 a.m. and you bring this to an audience, you're more likely to appeal to the local people more than the supermarkets who are looking for volume. That's the type of understanding we're talking about in going deep into values and understanding what the world looks like from your audience's perspective.
That's right. So this leads into the second part of that, which is understanding your identity. So achieving strategic clarity requires you to comprehensively understand what your target audience is, but also identify who they are, what they value, and why they care about your brand. So these insights form the basis for building a meaningful connection. So we talked about that in that process just before, where we're saying values matter. But you've got to understand, what is your audience really interested in and what do they care about? Because, and this doesn't mean faking it to make it. So you don't just start going, oh, that's what my audience wants, I'm just going to become that. You kind of have to believe it yourself. You have to know that this is something within you that you're passionate about as much as they are, so that the two worlds can collide in a good way. There's nothing worse than a brand that, and we've all had these experiences where they say they do certain things, they go about it a certain way. So you jump in, you buy that product, or you go get that product to do something in your life, whatever that is. And when you start using it in the way that they were telling you to use it or what the expectations were, and it doesn't deliver, instantly you have a disconnect. So faking it to make it doesn't work. Eventually it rises to the surface that you aren't what you are saying you are, and it will fake. So so
absolutely.
Do it for the right reasons. Don't do it because you are being told you have to, which aligns with the I jumped ahead of the gun there, but here we are. So aligning with the audience aspiration. So if they're aspiring to do something, then strategic clarity extends to aligning your brand with the aspirations of your audience. So this involves crafting a message that positions and resonates with their goals and creates a powerful connection that goes beyond just mere transactions. So essentially what we're saying there is that you need to look at what their aspirations are. And if you can help them on their journey and get them down to a certain outcome, which is something that might make them feel good, take a pain away, it might make them help someone else in a certain way. If you know what these things are, then you can align that with your strategy. And then when you get into the second and third phases of the pillars we're talking about, these things will become a lot clearer. And I guess we may as well get into that, which is the part that you have a real interest in, because we work on this times throughout the weeks and months we work together on these things.
Yeah.
The brand identity is what is beyond the logo. So what are the touch points, experiences does your brand provide? We're going to look at ways to discover visual elements that narrate your brand's unique story. And we're going to master the art of creating a cohesive brand identity system, otherwise known as a brand guidelines, to resonate with your audience. So let's get into these bits. So beyond the logo, because we've talked about this in a few other episodes about the fact that people think brand and they think logo.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
The logo is on all the touch points. And the experiences that you have, it's not the brand.
This comes from a deeply rooted definition of what brand began as, and that was basically back to the farms. And branding was the simple ironing of cattle with a symbol that represented the farm it stood for, and therefore marking the cattle as theirs. But that was dozens and dozens of years ago. We've come a long way, and hopefully today we would like to encourage people to think way past the logo. And in fact, the question I have for everybody listening to this is, what happens to your brand recognition if you take the logo away? This is a really uncomfortable answer to give any brand designer. Because we all talk about logo design. We all talk about starting a business and getting the logo. But what happens if that logo is not present? Is the identity still there? Are there cues to identify who your business is as a brand?
Yeah. So to give you an example is Netflix, right? So they have a logo that you can't miss because it's on everything that they do with their experience. But there's other things that make Netflix. And one of those is the da-dum. Like when you jump into things or get out of things and you hear the da-dum noise. And they know that, and they've done a thing recently where they called it the da-dum Awards or something like that, because they just know that that's their thing, right? So
the jingles.
The jingles, right? So, and we all know Macca's have one, and there's a few others that you know very, very well, that the experience is more than the logo and the product itself. There are other elements around that brand that when you experience the brand, you know that it's a moment that they're having with that, whatever that brand is and that element is. So think about things that you could bring to the table. It could be, and we've talked about this, it could be the experience of when you deliver your service. Like if no one else in your industry does something a certain way, why can't you do it that way? And if you do it that way, what's the outcome? Will it go back to what we talked about strategically as a point of difference and resonate with the target audience because that's what they want to experience? And even if it's hard, do it, because if it's going to make your brand stand out, that's the purpose of branding.
Correct.
So knowing that we've got all these things we just talked about, we've got another way to go about this. It isn't just about what you're hearing and saying and experiencing. It's the visual elements. How do we narrate your brand? So there are ways to visually do this so that like every time someone experiences your brand, you see it a certain way. And this is something you can control. A lot of the things we talked about in branding, you can't control because you can't control how someone, you can influence how someone thinks, but you can't control how they think. And so one way to influence that is through really great use of visual brand elements that are done in a certain way that makes someone go, I know who that is because I've seen that before.
Correct. This is where really doing some research, understanding what the audience is about, and then being able to translate that into a visual vocabulary that creates that meaning, that association, that visual anchoring. We're talking about, again, maintaining the proposition of removing your logo from your marketing materials. How well do they get recognized and associated with a brand? Because if I tell you right now that Coca-Cola doesn't need their logo anymore because they've built a very famous profile of a bottle that was only exclusive to Coca-Cola's, or you see their white swirl across a red background, you'll immediately pinpoint that to the brand of Coca-Cola. So this is strategically thought and massively taken action on. Obviously, you don't have millions, gazillions of dollars, but you do have creativity, you have nimbleness, and as a small business, you are asked to have the flexibility and the want to understand your audience. That's going to be your biggest trump, really, is to understand your audience, be able to relate your brand in a visual manner that doesn't rely just on the logo. Because when you start creating a color palette that is uniquely used by your brand, when you use the same fonts consistently, when you use a style of photography that enables people to create that association, that's when you are truly building that visual identity that forms the brand identity. And remind yourself that brand is a perception. It's not a thing. You can't really grab a brand and say, this is a brand. A brand is a perception, is a place in somebody's mind. So you control on your side the visual elements, the jingles, the things that will create that anchor point to your brand. And you're now building that identity on the side of the audience.
That's right. Well said, my friend. So the final part of brand identity we want to bring into the branding triad is the mastering the art of creating cohesive brand identity systems that resonate with your target audience. So this essentially is the brand guidelines. If you're not familiar with that term and you don't understand that, please reach out to us. We'd love to have a chat to you about how we can take all the elements your brand is currently using and put them into this guideline booklet that we're talking about. Now, I've had experience with working with one-page style guides, and I've had the experience of dealing with thousands or hundreds of pages in style guide. So how comprehensive this is really up to you and your brand and where it's at, and all sorts of other factors that might be important to you. The main reason for the guideline is when you're not in the room and you have to give someone else control of your brand, how can you do that without being in the room? That's where the guidelines kick in. So, and it's a guideline. It's not a control freak. It's basically, it's still up to human interpretation, which I've seen some horrific examples of this over the years, but it's still better than having nothing at all, because if you've got the guidelines, you can at least refer to it and go, well, look, it said use that red. Why is that pink?
Yes.
It said use this font. Why are you using that font? Yeah. Here's the image library of how we've talked about how using stuff in the past. Why are you now using that particular or that illustration instead of photography? These are things that the guideline can quickly cut out the conversation and, get the person who's interpreting it to understand a lot quicker. So, yeah.
So the guidelines, like Chris said, is one of your most invaluable tools for consistency and for growth, because you will grow as a business. Everybody, or most businesses, do have growth as an objective, and when you grow, your time starts becoming very disputed. So leveraging the power of a consistency method allows anybody joining the business, and especially the people that will be working with the facets of the business that deal with the brand identity, to quickly represent the brand and produce it in many instances in a coherent manner that maintains that integrity.
That's right. Yeah. So if you want to talk to us about this, please reach out to us for more than that. Or if you've had experiences with guidelines, please make comments and share with us about below. We'd love to know more about this, because we're always open to what's going out there in branding. Now, we're going to jump to the third pillar of this, which is brand marketing. So you now know who you're targeting and why you're doing it. You then know how you are going to represent it and put it into a way that's seen consistently. Then there's the part of getting it out there, and this is where you're fueling the engine. So you need to navigate the dynamic world of branding and marketing here, where we're talking about learning how to deliver your message across those various touch points and then engage with your audience strategically through whether it be social media, advertising, or other channels. So let's get into this, fueling the engine, navigating the dynamic world of branding and marketing. So what we're talking about here is that, Sim, you've designed this amazing logo, and it's been based on an amazing brief that our clients give us. And then it's like, well, hang on, where are we going to put it? Where's it going to go? And this is actually sometimes where the whole thing falls over, because if you haven't got those first two things in place, then it's going to be very hard to know what to do with it. But if you've done that very well, then knowing where to put this logo is actually going to work really well, especially if you have a product. So you instantly know, hang on, we've got packaging. You might have a brochure. You might need a website. You might need social media. You might need a video that either does something to explain what your product does, or explains how to use it, or explains how to tell others about it. Whichever way it is, that's what brand marketing can do. And if you know your strategy and your identity, marketing becomes quite easy to do, because you know why you're doing it and where to put it.
So we started with strategy, we've built the identity, and now we want to put out marketing that compels people towards the brand. Having done the first two stages of this process correctly now gives you all the elements and pieces you're going to pull from to create brand messaging, brand marketing that goes on social media, in person-to-person interactions, in product packaging that is going to be living on a shelf somewhere, that is going to be laying on the side of the road on an outdoor, that is going to be sitting on your car wrap. So all of these things are drawing from the initial stages of the discovery of who your audience is. What do you stand for? What does your visual identity mean, and how does it express itself now into the let's get business part of this equation? This is where fueling the engine comes in.
That's right. Yeah. So a lot of people just go straight to this. I mean, so many clients come to me and go, I would like to market my product. I'm like, well, what is it? Who is it? What is it? And this is when, again, that conversation about where you're wanting to put your product or your service or your brand can instantly tell us that we need to go back to strategy, because clearly whatever you're giving us does either clearly show that it's worth going there or not.
Very, very easy mistake to make. Jump into advertising, jump into the final part of this process, like Chris said. That's exactly what happens.
I've had many clients come to me and go, can you run a social media campaign for me? And then I'll go like, great. So what's your logo? And I have had responses where they haven't had one, but there are times when they have one and it's terrible. It's not built for social media. And we talked about this in a recent episode about the fact that why having your debranded logo be a way that it can work in these mediums. And so a lot of clients have developed a brand, but then not built it in the era, maybe in the last 2 decades. So maybe they're a 30, 40-year-old business. And it hasn't grown with the times. Or other reasons are that they don't have a font set, a color set. They don't have these consistent imagery. They have a terrible website. So they pay me to put stuff out there, and all they do is make them fail faster, or they spend a lot of money making Zuckerberg rich because he's happy to take your advertising dollar. Fantastic. And he's happy to find the people you want. So you may even know who you want to put it in front of. And those people may see what they want because the product is great. They go to the website and they get an experience that doesn't build on all the other previous expectations and perceptions that you've built up. So, because, I mean, you and I, Sim, we've done this a few times for clients. We've actually done an amazing logo. We've done an amazing promotion, but they haven't wanted to update their website. And then that's led to everything. Those two steps look fantastic. And then they go to the website and it's like, okay. Or even worse, it doesn't exist. And so we have nowhere to send them. So especially if you're a new brand, people still go to websites. Even if you have a great social media experience, they want to jump online. They want to see you've got reputation. They want to know that you've been out there and you're getting spoken about. So you need to think about these ways of getting your brand out there and making sure that the elements are in place. It sounds difficult, but it's not, to have the fundamentals in place. Correct. Which leads to this part of it, which is learning how to deliver your brand message across those points. So like I touched on earlier, depending on where your life cycle of your product is, your service is, you may need to make people aware of it. And actually, when I say aware of it, actually what it does. So you need to look at how you go about that part of the process. The second part might be that they now have it in their hands and they want to know how to use it. So then you have an instruction video on how to use it. And then, as I touched on in a previous section of this, is that the third part is, and this is where you want to get to, is how to tell others about your product. So that is the pinnacle of the marketing, is when you're starting to get the word of mouth and people want to actively be advocates and tell others about what you do. But many of our clients have said, let's put our product in an expo or an event. where they've paying thousands of dollars for this little booth that's 3x3 and
present. Yep.
And then it's like, well, hang on, what are we going to say so that when someone's wandering by, and they've got that couple of seconds to make a decision whether they want to come into your booth or not, the visuals aren't there, or the messaging is
the recognition hasn't been built. There is no trust. There is no recognition. And that's the problem. You're paying top dollar to be in the room with the big dogs, but you realize that you haven't really made a reputation of yourself as a dog, much less a big dog. Yeah. And when you get to the trust, the completion part of the process, which is sales, which is across the board the thing that everybody wants more of, we're missing ingredients. We're going back to the analogy in the first few minutes. We haven't put in the ingredients for the cake to grow, and now we're wanting to slice the cake up, but it's not grown. It cannot be spread across.
Yeah, love it. So, all right. So let's get to the final point of engaging with your audience. So everything we've talked about here is that you now know why you're doing it, what it's about. You look great, you look fantastic. We've talked about the messaging and things like that. You've got people actually hearing your message. Now you've got to respond. And this is the key to this whole process. And this is where people fall over a lot, is you've got people interested, but then you've got to know how to respond to their responses. So again, we're not talking about robots here where we've programmed them to respond a certain way. You can, as I said earlier, influence that. You can maybe get them to do a certain activity, which is download something or visit something or use the product, whatever the case is. But your ultimate goal is to get them to respond to you in some way so that you know that they're using your product, so that then you can respond to them and either, one, improve your product, get them to tell others about it, to influence how they use the product, either buy more of it. If you've got that kind of ascension model where they buy the basic model and you want them to then upgrade and go to the next version and the next version, this is where you need to understand how to engage with your audience.
Not only that, when you do everything that you just mentioned, Chris, you are enabling the visibility of your brand and how it addresses customers' needs to other potential customers who are looking from afar. And believe us, there is more window watching today than ever before in history. We have these incredibly powerful platforms that put us in touch and connect us with the world. But sometimes we're not actively engaging with it. Doesn't mean that we don't have a vision of it. Doesn't mean that we don't see what's happening in it. We don't participate in those conversations, but we are taking notice. And many a times in businesses that I've been a part or worked with, have been told repeatedly that people come in simply for the fact that they've been looking at their interactions that this business has had with other customers, and that it convinced them to come in. It wasn't a direct engagement. It was an observation that built that trust that we've been trying to impress upon the importance of building. So this is where engagement, community building, and always doing what's right by your audience comes in and leverages tenfold into other potential customers, because you're being exposed every time you speak and you resolve a problem in the public sphere. And when you don't, that also happens.
Yeah. One best example of this is Google reviews. A lot of people love to try and get a Google review. I want to know how hard it can be to get that sometimes. But the thing is, when you do get it, respond. And that's something that people don't do. And so if you respond to that Google review and actually personalize it, because you know who that person was because of they came into the store or you service them as a client, whatever that is, that'll actually do what Sim's just talked about there, where someone will see how you've responded and how you're treating your current clients. And they'll go, I like that experience. That seems like they really care. I want to be part of it. And then that's how you can influence sales. And that's not a stat you get to see unless they tell you, of course, that they saw it. But generally, it's really something, even though we've got all these amazing algorithms and stats and things that we can collect, there's still the one that you don't see, which is the one when people are actually just looking but don't actually click on a button or go anywhere, but they're still making a decision on you.
Correct.
So you've got to be aware of this throughout the process. So let's have our coffee cup moment. So you now have looked at ways you can move beyond your logo, as we've uncovered the visual elements that weave your brand story and why mastering that creation of cohesive brand identity system resonates with your audience. We've also explored the strategic clarity, the insights into defining your brand and understanding your audience and aligning it with their inspirations and why this is important. We've also navigated the dynamic world of branding and marketing and learned the importance of why strategically delivering a brand message across these various touch points engages your audience through social media and these other channels. So, look, if you really love what we've talked about today, we'd love you to book a discovery session with us. We'd like to understand your business better and assess the state of your brand and your goals and where your brand needs to be, because it may not be where you want. So please book us in, visit brandion.agency and go to the Brand Guardian link that we've got on the screen. How does it work? Well, we've made it pretty simple. We give you a 1, 2, 3 approach. We do that discovery call. We look at how your business is, find out what you're trying to achieve. We've got programs we want to put you in place. We understand one size doesn't fit all. All brands are at different cycles. So we want to put together one that determines the best program to meet your goals and put that plan together. Once we've agreed on where we're going, we then look at onboarding you and coaching you and looking at a regular assigned guardian, either myself or Sim at this point. And we look at ways to focus on amplifying your brand. So please book us in. We'd love to have a session with you. We'd love to talk about how your brand can be amplified, and we'd love to help you. There we go, Sim. We've got through the whole session. That's the brand triad, the triad, the 3 pillars, which is strategy, your brand identity, and then we've got your brand marketing. Without those 3, really your brand has a hard time getting on with its audience. And as we talk about, your brand does not exist without that audience to engage with, buy your product, or give you that feedback so your brand can keep growing. So take it on board. But Sim, any last comments as we sign off for this week?
I always love to know where people are watching or listening this to from. And I ask that you comment and type below where you are at this point and which country. We always indulge in finding out how much reach we have with the podcast at this point in time. See you in the future.
Thanks again, everyone. And we look forward to talking to you next week as we amplify your brand. Take care. Enjoy your week.